"You're in the wrong place, lady. This ain't a selfie range." The kid's voice rang out over the gravel at Fort Bannerfield Range, sharp with sarcasm and just loud enough for everyone else to hear. A few other recruits chuckled behind him. The woman didn't reply. She simply walked quietly, evenly across the open range, her silver windbreaker catching the Wyoming wind like a soft flag no one had raised. She didn't look like a soldier. Too small, too still, maybe mid-30s, with long black hair tied low against the collar of her coat. In her left hand, she carried a worn leather duffel, the kind that didn't come from any PX. And on her right, black gloves creased and used not for warmth, but for memory. No one recognized her, and that was the point. The fort was busy that Saturday. Civilian contractors, weekend reservists, a few local sheriffs in for brush-up certifications. Everyone came for their own reasons, qualifications, practice, pride. She came alone. No reservation. Civilian ID. Specialist Roy Jensen manned the check-in desk. "You here for rec shooting?" She nodded. He squinted at her paperwork. "Says you're applying for long distance 906 yards. Her voice was soft. "That's correct." One of the younger recruits behind her, Private Drew Kinley, still grinning, whispered to his buddy, "She hits that from 900, I'll do latrine duty all month." Another muttered, "If she can even lift the rifle." She didn't turn. She didn't flinch. She just pulled her gloves tighter, eyes scanning the range, not in awe, not in curiosity, like someone counting exits without realizing they're doing it. The jokes kept coming, the type that sting if you let them. She didn't. There was a weight in her stillness, like someone who had waited longer than this, for worse. When her turn came, she stepped forward, bypassing the weapon racks entirely. "Ma'am," Jensen said, confused. "Need to select your rifle first." But she didn't stop. Instead, she walked to the control panel at the center of the range. The biometric unit wasn't even supposed to be active on weekends. She placed her hand on it. The system paused. A hum, a blink, then red. The screen flashed alive in full override mode. Military tier, biosignature verified call. Sign Widow Mark 27 reactivated. Everything stopped. Conversations, laughter, movement. The system wasn't supposed to do that. Not for a civilian. Colonel Harlan Hayes hadn't worn his sidearm in 6 months. Now, standing in the middle of range control, with his eyes locked on the screen, he suddenly wished he had. Call sign Widow Mark 27, reactivated system override initiated clearance. Tier black level. Hayes stepped forward slowly, as if approaching a sleeping minefield. He looked at her, at the woman in the silver jacket, and his voice, when it came, was hoarse. "That can't be real." She said nothing, just looked at him with those storm-held eyes, like someone who had already seen the worst and come back with nothing but silence. Master Sergeant Dean Martinez entered from the East Range building, a clipboard still in hand. "What's going on?" he asked. Then he saw the screen. He froze mid-step. Jensen, the check-in specialist, spoke from behind the glass. "Sir, she didn't enter a military ID. The system triggered itself." Martinez walked over and tapped into the range database with his clearance badge. The interface hesitated, then shifted. Lines of redacted files crawled across the screen. Then a tag blinked through Shadow Cell. Ghost Echo status, erased records, fragmented operator roads. Evelyn code name, Widow Mark 27, active operations. 17 confirmed friendly casualties. 0 classified region, Naric Valley. Corin Ghost Echo. Martinez whispered. That wasn't supposed to be real. He tapped again. More fragments surfaced, data not meant for daylight. Operating beyond grid contact. Extraction under Black Flag protocols. Autonomous Execution Authority. Hayes felt a knot form in his chest. "I read about Widow Mark once," he said, voice thin. Nobody knew who it was. Just stories. One operator who pulled entire teams out when no one else would even go in. Private Kinley. The young soldier who joked about latrine duty was now as pale as his regulation t-shirt. She really did all that. Martinez didn't answer. He was staring at the access logs. "Sir, This system, it's pulling protocol files I've never seen. Clearance higher than ours. He turned to Evelyn. Cautious, not afraid, just reverent. These files were buried. Like someone didn't just delete the record, they tried to forget she ever existed. Evelyn glanced at the terminal, then back at the horizon beyond the range. Systems forget because someone tells them to. She said, but sometimes they remember anyway. The air had shifted. Nobody was talking now. Not the instructors, not the laughing soldiers, not even Carson, the range supervisor, who had trained Olympic shooters and once helped write the manual for psychological resilience under fire. He stepped forward slowly, eyes scanning her without speaking. Then, almost without realizing it, he bowed his head. Behind him, the screen updated again. Pattern match detected signature profile. Widow 27 combat response. Verified clearance protocols re-enabled Widow Mark 27, Hayes murmured. The one who never lost anyone. The one who vanished after Naric. Nobody knew what to say next. But deep down, every person in that room knew. They hadn't just mocked a stranger. They had laughed at a ghost who never stopped carrying the weight. Nobody dared to speak first. Even the wind outside seemed to quiet itself, as if the range had become hallowed ground. Colonel Hayes broke the silence. I was in Kandahar the year Naric went red, he said quietly. 17 teams sent in. 12 didn't come back. Evelyn didn't respond. Not right away. She stood still as stone-silver jacket unmoving, gloved hands resting lightly against the counter edge. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm, but underneath it, something cracked like distant ice. We weren't supposed to be real. Martinez turned toward her. Ghost echo. Evelyn nodded once. We operated outside all flags. No insignia, no chain of command, no extraction if we failed. She paused. But we didn't fail, Hayes asked, gently. Then what happened in Naric? Evelyn's eyes drifted to the far wall, as if looking past it, threw it into memory. We were sent in to extract the daughter of a foreign diplomat. Intelligence said she was alive, held in a black site just north of grid point K12. She swallowed once. It was bait. Martinez closed his eyes. They knew you were coming. She nodded again. They weren't after the girl. They wanted to expose Ghost Echo. Catch us alive if they could. Prove we existed. Hayes leaned forward, his voice tight. How did you survive? Evelyn glanced down at the table, then slowly unbuttoned one glove. Her right hand bore a faint scar down the wrist, old. Straight. Surgical. I didn't. They stared. I ordered my team to fall back to secondary Delta. Told them I'd draw the enemy toward the ravine and meet them at the rendezvous 6 hours later. But you didn't make it, Martinez whispered. Evelyn's voice turned even quieter. I made it. I watched them extract from half a mile away, but I never made contact. Not once. Because if I had, the enemy would have followed the signal. She looked up at them now, not with pride, not even regret, with clarity. I kept moving for 3 days. Circles, traps, misdirection. I left them every reason to believe I was the last one left and still trying to escape. I let them chase the ghost. And by the time you surfaced, Hayes said softly, the system had already called it. Presumed KIA. Evelyn nodded. They declared Ghost Echo lost, files sealed, names burned. That's what kept them safe. Martinez stepped back from the screen. His hands were shaking again. You erased yourself. I had to, she replied. For a moment, no one moved. Then the system, still locked in override, flickered again. Operator status missing, presumed Kia. Mission outcome diplomatic asset. Extracted civilian casualties. 0 friendly casualties. 0 field commander. Widow Mark 27. Hayes looked down, his voice rough. You saved everyone, but they buried you for it. Evelyn's response came without bitterness. Surviving isn't the same as being alive. And with that, she pulled the glove back over her scar and turned away from the screen. Behind her, a room full of trained soldiers stood without knowing whether to salute. apologize, or simply remember. Across the range, heads turned. Someone muttered, "That can't be real." Colonel Harlan Hayes, who'd been reviewing training rosters in the back office, stepped into view. He saw the screen. Then he saw her. His breath caught. "You," he said, barely audible. "That's not possible." The woman didn't react. She stood there, her silver jacket unmoving in the wind. As the entire range forgot how to breathe, she hadn't come to prove anything, but the system remembered what everyone else forgot. Colonel Hayes returned to the system terminal. It was still pulsing red. Advanced training protocols unlocked operative clearance, reinstated status, active awaiting redeployment. He turned to Evelyn. "You're cleared," he said. "We could bring you back. Full reinstatement. You'd lead again." She looked at him. Not unkindly, but she shook her head. "I'm not here for that." Master Sergeant Martinez stepped forward, hesitating. "There's still need for operators like you. Rhodes, the kind who don't flinch." Her voice was quiet. "Flinching isn't the problem. Forgetting why you flinched is." There was a silence, a long one. Then she asked, "Is the old weapons vault still under Section 4? Hayes blinked. "It's decommissioned. But yes, I left something there." 10 minutes later, they unlocked a narrow drawer in the back of the armory. Inside, nestled in a velvet tray, lay a single round, matte steel, unused, custom engraved. "If one breathes, I stay." Hayes stared at it. "This was yours." Evelyn nodded. "The team had it made after Mission 13. Said I kept pulling people out who shouldn't have made it." Martinez whispered, "You carried it through every op." "Everyone." She picked it up with both hands, gently, like it might still mean something more than brass and metal. "I never loaded it. It wasn't meant to fire." Martinez blinked. "What was it for?" Then Evelyn glanced at him. "To remind me that one person, just one, can be enough." She stood there for a moment longer, holding the round in her palm. Then she turned to Hayes. "I don't need records restored. I don't need rank." He nodded, slowly. "What do you need?" Her reply came without pause, a clear way out. She wasn't asking for escape. She was asking for peace. As she stepped outside, the wind caught the edge of her jacket again, lifting silver into the late-day sun. Behind her, the screen in the control room flickered once more. Unprompted. Mission count 17. Friendly saved, unconfirmed system status. Widow Mark 27 active note. Record not to be erased. No one knew who entered that line, but nobody deleted it. She left without ceremony. No handshake, no salute, no camera. Just the sound of her boots fading across gravel and the worn leather bag swaying at her side, one bullet heavier than it was when she arrived. Nobody followed, not because they didn't care, but because somehow they understood Evelyn Rhodes had already carried too many people with her. Asking her to carry more would have been cruelty disguised as honor. A week later, the wind was colder at Fort Bannerfield. Private Kinley stood at Range 9 with a different posture now. He didn't laugh as easily, didn't assume as quickly. He transferred out of his unit 2 months later, volunteered for search and rescue. When asked why, he just said, "Some people walked into the dark so I wouldn't have to." Sergeant Mercer stopped joking about tourists, started mentoring slower recruits. Carson, the range supervisor, dug out Evelyn's handwritten note from the drawer each time he felt the urge to judge someone by the cut of their jacket. It read, "If someone speaks little, don't laugh. They may have screamed once for someone else to live." Martinez retired 6 months after she left. Before he did, he submitted one final amendment to the fort's internal training manual. It was only one sentence. "The quietest one in the room isn't hiding. They've just already seen enough darkness for a dozen lifetimes." No one argued. On a cold Tuesday morning, Carson arrived early and bolted a small brass plate into the wood post beside Lane 9. Not official, not recorded, but permanent. Widow Mark 27. No orders needed. No one dies if she still breathes. It wasn't for tourists. It wasn't for history. It was for those who stayed, those who laughed too soon, and now those who watch more carefully. Late at night, when the floodlights dimmed and the range fell quiet again, sometimes a shadow would pass across Lane 9. Some swore they saw a silver flicker vanish down the gravel path. Nobody chased it. Some people don't retire. They just find quieter ways to keep others breathing.